Welcome to the Dignity of Women, where we dig deep into the vocation and dignity of women in the church in modern times and as an answer to the call for a new evangelization. I'm your host, Kimberly Cook. Joining me today is a good friend of mine, Erin Voorde. Thank you so much for being here, Erin.
Thanks, Kim. I'm excited to be here.
Erin has extensive experience coaching and training high achieving professionals at all levels of their career. Her approach is informed by her diverse and experience in project management, strategic planning, and human formation in the political, legal, nonprofit, and high ed in- industries. Erin currently serves on the board of advisors at the Kayaka Center for Principled Entrepreneurship at the Catholic University of America. She can often be found traveling on adventures with her husband and four boys, which is something that she's about to do as soon as she hops off this podcast. So, thank you for taking the time before you get in the car and head out to Florida to do this podcast with us.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
So, Erin, the reason that I asked you, especially to be on this podcast, is because I know that you are, in my mind, the queen of goal setting and goal meeting. I think more importantly, because I set a lot of goals. I mean, goal setting is really easy, but meeting those goals is a whole nother thing. And so we are coming up on New Year's. And of course, one of the things that people always talk about is New Year's resolutions. Do you make them? How do you feel about them? Are they just a waste of time? What do they have to do with our goals? Is it good, bad, or indifferent? So I was like, I'm going to pull Erin Voorde on this podcast and we're going to talk about this. So most of the time we scoff at the multitude of joggers we see, right, passing by on January 1st, and then we watch them slowly taper off as the weeks and maybe months for the ones that are really hold out, go on. But then, of course, there's less and less people jogging by. Same thing with people dieting. They start to lose weight and then all of a sudden they go the opposite direction. Cigarette sales go down and then all of a sudden increase again. So these forced resolutions seem like they're often not kept. And worse than that, they can actually lead to discouragement. So, how do you feel about setting resolutions such as New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I actually don't really like the term resolution, actually. So I like to reframe things a little bit differently. And when we're talking about kind of, the beginning of the year and starting off fresh, like I think at the beginning, the most important thing to realize is that why we have this desire in the first place is because we're human, right? And humans have a desire to grow, right? Like all living things. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? It's the same for a tree, a flower, right? So having this ability or this innate understanding that we can hold kind of two realities within us as human beings, right? We can say, I'm content with how I am right now, right? I love myself as I am. I am okay with the imperfections and the flaws and the weaknesses, right? Like, that I'm would love to lose 10 pounds, but I'm okay, right? I love myself. And then also the reality of, but I want more. I want better, right? I want to grow. I want to be healthier. I want to be stronger, right? So just recognizing that basic fundamental part about human nature is really important to understand why we have this kind of urge or desire, right, in the first place to grow. And then secondly, I would say, I like to New Year's resolution, right? It feels like a fad and people kind of resist it, or they feel like they have tried and failed many times, right? And that can be really discouraging. So the way that I approach kind of the New Year's time, like I love it, right? New Year, it's really fun to think about it differently. And I'd like to just think about it as more of dreaming, right? Because like, for example, my husband and I didn't move our family to Europe because we had a goal even or a resolution to live in Europe. We had a dream of living in Europe, right? And we had this vision of what it could be for our family and what it would be like to live there and what it would be like for our boys to be able to speak a foreign language and just that cultural immersion and experience that we would gain from living in a foreign country. Like that was a dream that we had. And that feels really different than like a resolution or something I'm going to drop on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're saying you're looking at it in a different light of saying we're not just talking about making a resolution. And also, I like the way that you said, not just like I want to drop 10 pounds, but I want to be healthier. So looking at it in
Mhm.
that different light, I think also changes things because it's not just, okay, I know I have to drop 10 pounds. I know that I shouldn't be eating cake, but it's this desire to grow, to be better, to be healthier as opposed to just looking at it as this goal of getting on the scale every night and seeing the numbers go down. It's that I want to feel healthier. I want to be stronger. I want to be better. And that's something that motivates the human soul, I think, more than just thinking, like you said, things on a paper. Like, okay, I'm going to stop smoking as much. I'm going to stop eating as
Mhm.
much. I'm going to stop. And you talked about when your family moved to Poland for a few years,
Mhm.
and that wasn't something that was necessary. Like you didn't get transferred there or anything. It was a dream that you guys had, and then you made into a reality.
Exactly.
So setting things more like look at being able to dream and look at what are your dreams. Now, how do you dream? I mean,
Yeah.
how does somebody dream? Because what about if somebody's just very practical and realistic and like I can't just up and move my family to Poland or do something like that? Like, yeah, sure, it would be great to have my kids speak a different language, just get Rosetta Stone or something. How does somebody dream big or even be in touch with what their dreams are?
Yeah. So many great questions, Kim, and we can unpack that a little bit. So, um, I think first it's the understanding that, having that self-awareness of what do we really want, right? And having permission to do that. So kind of when you were talking about, even just losing 10 pounds, right? It's this idea that are you coming from it from a place of I have to do it, I should do it, right? I should lose 10 pounds, therefore I'm writing it down on my goal list, right? Or feel like I have a duty to do it, right? Everyone else is doing this, so I should be doing it too, right? Or is this something that we actually want, right? And if we actually want something, it's interesting that Solanus Casey actually talks about this, about when you kind of set an intention. He has kind of a three-part thing that he talks about, which is like one, you actually have to ask for what you want, right? A lot of people think about it a lot and don't actually ask or feel like they can make the ask, right? The second thing is that we have to put forward some kind of effort, right? And then, it should cost us something, right? And the third thing, which I think is the most novel that I ever heard, was you actually have to change your life in order to receive the thing you asked for, right? So
Wow.
I want to lose 10 pounds, but do we actually want to lose 10 pounds? Do we actually want to um, go through the work that it would take to do that? Right? Or do I want to eat ice cream on my couch every night or whatever? Right? So, just like a silly example, but when you think about it, think about those things that you want or think about a lot. Right? And is it something that you actually want to do, or is it something that bothers you, right, about yourself? Or, and where's that coming from? Is it coming from guilt? Is it coming from kind of a shame? Is it coming from comparing yourself to other people or competing with your next door neighbor, right? I think we should get a new car because my neighbor's got a new car, right? It's like, where is this really coming from? And examining that first. So there's so much kind of this fundamental work that we can do within ourselves before we even kind of start writing those goals down. But really understanding, right, kind of having that self-awareness. And it's interesting. I'm CEO of West of Perfection, which is a coaching and consulting company. And this is goals are part of what coaching is all about, right? And so we actually put together kind of a 3-day like email series, which is free. You can get it on our website if you want more guidance on specifically goal setting. But we kind of break it down into 3 parts to just be really practical about it. So there is such a practical piece of dreaming, of goal setting, right? So it's not just like pie in the sky ideal, right? Which is what a lot of people think of when they think of dreams, like I want to win $1 million or something in the lottery, right?
Right.
But that it can be really practicalized, right? So, and we can talk through the steps of that if you want, but just being able to see like it's not an either or. You don't have to be a dreamer or a practical person. Like growth is for all human beings, right? And being able to achieve or like set out on a vision of like what's next, what's more, what's better, right, is a good thing. And our desires could totally lead us astray, or good focused desires, right, can lead us to greatness.
Right. And so, yeah, you talked a little bit about having this goal outline or this structure. And I think that's another thing is we talked about how do you dream? You were talking about being in touch with the real desires, this really, really a desire. And I think that's a good thing because most of the times when we talk about, okay, I want to lose, again, we're going back to like losing 10
Mm-hmm.
pounds. That's one of the biggest things, right? That people say is losing weight with New Year's or jogging every day or some kind of exercise every day. And usually it does come from this, I think maybe guilt or feeling like this is what I should do,
Mm-hmm.
but is it something that they have owned yet or really want to do? So that's something to look at. And then once we decide that this is a goal that I authentically have and that I really want to change about myself, maybe I have a really hard time, maybe I've tried before. What does that basic goal line outline look like? And should we be focusing on all of our goals across the board at the same time, as far as like one mental, one spiritual, one physical, or should we break that down? Is that too much, too
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming to hit everything at one time?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different ways to approach this. And, I would say, for these purposes, right, it's important to, like, you can kind of come at it from a big like vision statement kind of an idea, right? It's like, what do I want my 2025 to look like? What do I want this next year to look like? And kind of breaking it down. That's part of what we do. We have my husband and I do a dream day every year. We've been doing this since like the first year of our marriage. So almost 15 years, long time. And being able to kind of break it down into categories of looking at, what do we want our family life to look like? What do we want our financials to look like? What about our faith? What about our, wellness, health and wellness, right? It's like, what do we want each of these to be for ourselves? And what do we want it to be kind of for our family? And then taking that and allowing the biggest step that I would say when you're in this kind of dreaming, visualizing step, right, is to don't get into the planning, right? Don't think about the how, and because we can easily trip ourselves up with, but it's not practical. There's no way I could move to Europe. There's no way, like all the obstacles we can easily think of. And so we kind of have a rule that there's no bad dream, there's no dumb dreams on dream day, like anything's on the table, like throw it out there, right? And so just to separate dreaming and the possibility of what if, right? And also to separate that from planning. How are we going to do it? So just start with the what. What is it that we want? And then planning is separate. It's a whole different day.
Right. Okay. So that's good to think about that you have to be able to let yourself dream first and come up with
Mm-hmm.
all the dreams and then approach the practical, which I think a lot of people stop themselves, right? As like, this isn't practical. So
Exactly.
exactly. All these dreams that I have, not many of them are practical. So I'm just not even going to put them out there. I'm not going to let them entertain a space in my mind because realistically, they're not going to happen. And so we kind of crush our dreams before we get a chance to
Yes.
dream them.
Exactly. Right. We don't give ourselves permission for them. We also don't give ourselves like, right. There's a lot of what we work on when we're doing goal setting in coaching is belief, right? Because a lot of times we'll think like, well, my neighbor, my sister could lose 10 pounds, but not me. Like if I do the exercise, if I eat right, it's not going to work for me. Like we have this weird way of making ourselves special in a bad way almost, right? It's like, well, you're a human being. They're a human being. There's these, I mean, obviously there's health things that always can complicate, situations. But when it comes down to it, right, we know kind of what we need to do, often to achieve a goal. And a lot of the kind of underlying big obstacle for people is that they don't believe that it's going to work for them. Right. I don't believe that it's going to work out if I pack up my family and like, what if all these bad things right? We can always get caught in our head.
The what ifs. Yeah.
With all the what ifs. Right. And so, we decided before we had any idea of how to move to Europe that we were going to. Right. So we had already decided this is what we're going to do. Right. So, and then when you're kind of making something, so once you kind of get out of that what stage and like thinking about those goals and dreams that you want to achieve, right? Putting those into SMART goals, right? I'm sure people have heard of that, right? SMART meaning specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely, right? And so that can really take a goal that's like, I want to be healthier, right? It's so general. How will you know if you've succeeded in that goal? And I think that's where a lot of people trip themselves up with resolutions or things because it's not specific. They can't measure it. Maybe it's too challenging for them. Like it's too much of a stretch and there's no way it's,
Right.
possible to do that. Or it's not relevant. Like it doesn't fit into the context of their life. Right. Or it's
Right.
not timely. Like they don't have a deadline. They don't have the accountability to follow through on it. And, so there's a lot of different kind of factors which can trip us up, right? And become obstacles for us. So kind of setting SMART goals and really being able to um, know what it would mean if we succeed or fail at it, right? How long would this
Mhm.
take? What kind of makes sense for this in the context of our greater life, right? It would be unreasonable to say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds by tomorrow, right? It's
Right.
outside of reality, right? So, being able to kind of, give ourselves those parameters can really help make something that's really big practical.
Right. And you talked about married couples and you and your husband, for example, and how you guys have dreamed together and set goals together for your family or what that looks like. Should married couples do that together, especially, yearly, not necessarily New Year's, but maybe as we're talking about that kind of once a year, really being in touch with what you're looking ahead to and what you want to change and what you want to better about yourself or what you want to be more intentional about. A lot of times people don't think about doing that as a couple. It's a very individual
Mm-hmm.
thing that we think about, like, okay, what is your New Year's resolution? What is my New Year's resolution? What is your goal for the year? What's my goal for the year? But we don't necessarily think about doing that as a couple or as a family. What do we want our family to look like? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that just happens, right? I mean, how much control do we have over that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. So I guess how we've approached it is, when we had our first son, 11 years ago, right? We kind of sat down and kind of created an overall kind of formation plan for children, right? And anchoring those as being specific milestones of what do we want, as far as like, within not so specific, but just kind of general directional of, education, like what are our priorities, right, for children and, developmental milestones being one of them, like education, music, right? These are kind of pillars that we have pulled out as being focus points for our family and then created a family culture around that, right? So we kind of did that. That's kind of like the big vision statement, right? That you'd create for yourself or for an organization, right? So and then you can look to that, right, each year. So then each year it's like, okay, where are we with these kind of pillars of our family culture? And what about this next year, right? And how does that fit in with the whole, right? We know, a kid has roughly 18 years in our house. We have, right, so you kind of have these
Mhm.
things that you can look forward, right? So even last year when our oldest turned 10 for Dream Day, I said, I can't even wrap my mind around what we should be even or like what I would even want for next year because I can't see the whole. So we went out and plotted out like the next, kind of 8, 9 years of him being in
Mm.
our house and how old will we be in 9 years? How old will each of the kids be and what would that look like? And kind of map this, a visual out so we could see, what year are they entering high school? What year are they entering middle school? And kind of being able to see, well, when our youngest, when is he going to be in school? What year is that going to be? Right. And just kind of seeing it
Right.
is really, really helpful. But I would say, every marriage is different. And, but my husband and I, we have kind of both individual and then family goals that we
Hmm.
kind of have in different categories.
Okay, great. And then what do you say to those of us who get easily discouraged when we fail to meet a goal and tend toward an all or nothing mentality? And I think that is the greater part of the population. It's
Yeah.
either I meet this goal and I'm successful, or I didn't fully meet it and I'm a complete failure.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a little story, I guess, about that because one of the problems or obstacles to overcome is to understand what it would look like to succeed And then what are you going to do when you fail? Right. So when you succeed, what would that look like? And, I was coaching one mom who her goal was to exercise 3 days a week. Okay. And she had a bunch of little kids, and her idea of what she had created success would look like was uninterrupted 45-minute video that she played, right? And did the exercise. And then, so she was trying to think of all of these ways she could keep her 6 kids busy, and how could she carve out 45 minutes. And she tried the morning, she tried the night. And through coaching, right, we kind of came to this place of like, what if we changed what success would look like, right? What if you got to choose what success in this goal would look like, right? This is not a moral issue, this is just straight up your choice, right? So what would success look like? And so she came to the place that, you know what, I will cross it off that I am succeeding in this goal if I hit play on the video.
Oh my gosh.
Like she
That's
broke
great.
it down that small. And so
Yes.
she said, and you know what happened? She ended up exercising at least 10 to 15 minutes, 7 days a week.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yes.
And right. And so you know what I mean? It's this mental shift, right? Where we set up so many barriers for ourselves in, perfectionism, or what we
It
think
has to be perfect,
that it
right?
has to look like in order to succeed. And she actually made her weight goal that she wanted, in a couple of months, because she didn't let perfect get in the way of doing it.
Oh my
Right.
gosh. Yeah.
So it was really cool.
And it's hard it's hard to undo perfect in our mind. I think so many of us are geared towards it has to look like this, and I'm not okay with it looking
Right.
like less than that, because
Mhm.
I have to if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all the way, and I'm going to be the best or something. We
Yeah.
have that impossible bar for ourselves so many
Right.
times. And I know yesterday I was doing laundry, and my 3-year-old decided he was going to help by like putting all the laundry baskets upside down in my room all over the floor, and then starting to throw the laundry all over the place. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I can, I'm going to have to wait till they go to bed, or I'm going to have to this or that. But I was just like, I don't know where the inspiration came from on this, but one of the pieces of laundry became a poisonous rattlesnake. And so he was fighting that piece of laundry. And it's like, while he was fighting this sheet or something, I was like madly folding stuff in the background. And then every like few minutes I would jump in on the fight with him. And,
Mhm.
but it was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting it done. Like
Yeah.
he's he's like, I didn't have to like get upset, or I didn't have to like feel like I can't get this done right now. And it was like I was still able to accomplish folding the
Right.
laundry while he was still playing and doing, what he does. And he was having the greatest time of his life. And I was feeling very successful in this small task because it was getting accomplished, and I wasn't losing my cool, and
Mhm.
he was having a great time. So it
Yeah.
was like win, win, win. Yeah, go mom. But it's
Right.
like, I mean, I feel like we don't do that often enough. Normally we just go towards discouragement. Like, I'm never going to get to fold this laundry, or I'm never going to get these
Yeah.
things done because I have all these other little things I have to do to get accomplished. So
Yeah.
I think that gets in the way all the time.
Yeah. A lot of times we give up, right? Or we do something where it's what do you call it? It's like a self sabotage, right?
Yes.
Or we'll say, and it's funny because when you have kids, you see these basic human tendencies that we all do, but you see them really clearly, right? So one of my sons did something, and he wasn't allowed to go play at his friend's house, and they were going to play football or something at his friend's house, and he was not allowed to go. And so about 5 minutes later, he came to me and said that he got hurt. He hurt his leg, and so he couldn't have gone to his friends anyway, right? So he was he couldn't handle the discouragement, right? Or like he felt discouraged and embarrassed and sad that he couldn't go. So he, happened to just fall off the swing or something. Maybe his leg was hurt. I don't know, right? But it's like we do this all the time. It's like, well, I couldn't have gone it anyway. I couldn't have done it anyway because,
Right.
the 3-year-old came in and spoiled the laundry. So like of course I didn't get it done, right? So
Right.
we'll give up, or we'll kind of self-sabotage our own success instead of shifting, right? Because if, a lot of people thought, you're crazy. You moved to Europe with a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and then adopted a baby while you were over there. from another foreign country, right? And it's like, how could you live and move abroad with small children, right? And our mentality was, okay, we do it with them or we don't do it at
Yeah.
all, right? Because when are you going to
You're
do
never
it?
going to be able to do it. Right. But
Right.
people, I think, put it off. Like maybe when we retire, maybe
Right.
when we, it's just like this dream that's probably never going to get realized. We'll just keep kicking it down,
Right.
you know,
Right. And so we
the
said,
road.
okay, we have to adjust what our expectations are going to look like because we're not, two 25-year-old, newly married, no kids, backpacking Europe. It's not going to look like that. It's not going to look like an Instagram pretty reel. Like it's going to be slow. We're not going to see as much as we could have if we didn't have them. Right. But it's like we'd rather do it with them and have it look a little messy
Yes,
and have it be hard than not do it at all.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
that's a good way of looking at it, right? And then how do you measure those personal successes that you have in your family? And how does your spouse or your family celebrate either goals that you make, goals that your husband makes, or your children? Is there a way that you guys recognize each other's successes?
That's a great question. So we actually begin every dream day by reflecting on the last year. And we do it. We've started bringing in our kids, doing kind of, I mean, we've kind of run like a company in a sense, right? We have kind of quarterly check-ins, or the kids have their semester check-ins, right? They set goals at the beginning of a semester for school, for themselves. And we really help them kind of pick one or two things, right, that they're going to work on for the next couple months and then check in with them. And then for my husband and I, we kind of go through, we have our huge list, right? And and here's the thing, you get better at it, right? The first year, this was actually all my husband's idea. He wanted to do this, and I was super practical, realistic person, and I literally told him when he was like, we should like do this like dream day where we like sit down and dream about. And I was like, that sounds really dumb. Like that was my response. I was like, it sounds unrealistic. It sounds like pie in the sky, like
Yes.
just kind of crazy, a waste of time for sure, right?
And to
And
be able to say, like, if he's telling you, we don't have to think about the practical, like, hows, we're just going to dream. It's like
right,
you said, okay, what's the point?
right.
Like if we're not talking about the hows, then what's the
And what are we
point of
talking
not
about?
putting these pie in the sky dreams out
Right.
there?
But when he asked me, like, what are your dreams? And I couldn't even come up with any. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe one day I'll write a book. I don't know. Like, didn't even have anything, right? But I will say that the more that you do it, the better at it you get, right? So the first year, we put together about 8 combined. Like, we spent time trying to come up with 8 goals. 2 years ago, we had 63,
Oh my gosh, that's
right?
so fun.
And
That's
at the
great.
yeah, and at the end of the year, we accomplished almost all of them.
Oh wow. So that
Right.
shows a
So
lot of growth.
a lot, right? And so that was, doing it for 12 years, right? But it changed and focused. And the more that you do it, you see what works and you see, yourself more, right? You can see how your family changes and grows so that's a big piece. But the other thing that I think is really important with, the celebrating, like you said, and kind of having that closure of wow, we did this, right? But a piece that's in the middle that we didn't talk about is accountability. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things that people don't put in place. And it's one of the reasons why they don't succeed in their goals, right? So, which is why I love coaching so much because you have a built in accountability partner, right? And someone who's strategic and can help you refine and identify and overcome those obstacles that are in your way. But my husband and I, we are each other's accountability on our dreams, like for our family, right? So, finding someone who you can, put regular meetings with and like ask me, how am I doing in this? I want you to be an accountability partner, right? And then the other part is prioritizing, right? I think we can't work on everything at once, right? Especially big things. There's little things and big things we can kind of work simultaneously. But for the most part, we would say just do one. And we say first things first, what's first, right? Which of these is first? And just pick one and
The
start
most
with it.
important. The most important thing first.
Prioritizing has more to do with if you ask someone like what's first, right? They'll know, right, for
Okay.
themselves. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like you would know, there's no magical like formula or something, right? It's more like what's first for you? Like what's been bothering you the most? What's the thing that it's really been like, if this thing was, you know, accomplished or went away, or, if I just could get some more sleep, right? I'd feel a lot better. And then I'd, be able to do these other things, right? So kind of like when you're
That
looking.
it can be that simple. That's interesting, Erin, because like I'm thinking as you're saying this, I'm thinking like some huge goal, right? But and then you're like, if I could just get more sleep, I'm like, oh, is that really like a goal or to be met? I just think that's like gone by the wayside. So it's funny that it can even just be the small things, like you were saying, exercising 3 days,
Absolutely.
just hitting play on the exercise video
Hmm.
3 times a week, or just finding out a way to get however much more sleep, like an extra half hour of sleep to
Hmm.
start with, or something like that. Like these can be kind of baby goals, not like when we think of dreams or goals, they seem earth shattering and something like moving to Europe,
Or writing a
But
book, right? Or something that's so big and out
I mean,
there.
they can, yeah, but they can be also, there can be little goals first. It doesn't have to always be this gigantic goal. Like, maybe we're not all wanting to be like the next president or something.
Mhm.
They can be smaller and more attainable goals in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I think it's helpful to do the categories, right? Because you can kind of examine, in this area of my life or in this relationship, right? What would our goals be for our marriage? What would it be for our kids? And you think about it, right? And wow, I could really use some more, quality time with this child, like during this season,
Right.
right? Or,
Oh, that's
well,
really good. Yeah.
yeah, they have a milestone kind of, coming up, right? We're entering, puberty. We're about, a big milestone is turning 12, right? And kind of having like, how can we create a rite of passage for this child, as they're, in their 12th year? Or, what is something intentionally we want to do with each child? Or, what are the things that I need, right? And as a human being, and I think this is where a lot of women in particular don't think about or put aside. And we think that we have to create goals around serving other people only, right? And that anything that we do for ourselves is selfish, right? But when we look at the reality, we can say, like, okay, so, you know, you're a human being, right? What does a human being need, right? Sleep, good food, exercise, right? Every human being needs to do those things, right? And so kind of thinking, if we're not there with the basic human needs, like start there. Because
Right.
you'll feel so much better and have a lot more energy to be able to do, bigger and different things. But you're right, I didn't even think about that. We often think about these big things, but yeah, just start with what is first for you.
Great. And then I guess lastly, I would ask what advice you have for coming up with the right goals in the first place. You spoke a little bit about this, but especially if someone has experienced multiple failures already or has low self-esteem. A lot of people struggle with these things, or even has been conditioned towards failure growing up in their life, and they may be consistently setting low bars for themselves. So how can they overcome that mentality and get in touch with the goals that truly matter most to them?
This is a really great question, Kim, and this is why we wrote our goal setting guide in the first place, is for this question, because this is where you start, right? And a lot of people kind of skip this step of reflection, right? To just like, I should do this and I should do this and I should do this and I should do this, right? But we have a whole list of questions where you can first reflect. It's not even about goal setting. Step one is not about goal setting. It's about, where are you? And increasing that self-awareness and understanding of where are you today and what are you like, right? Where did I make, thinking about this last year, right? Reflection and looking back really helps us to understand, where did I derive the most happiness this year, personally or professionally? What are kind of my most significant stressors or barriers or things that really deplete my energy? If I could think of a new habit that I'd love to form this year, how would I do that? Did I form any habits last year? And how did that impact my life? What am I grateful for in this last year? What am I most proud of in 2024, right? We can think about that kind of reflection can help us really ground ourselves in and grow in self-awareness, then to be able to look forward So I think that's a really important step because when we skip it, we really get that discouragement of, kind of skipping step one and then really, not setting ourselves up for success in the first place.
I think that is excellent advice, especially because I think a lot of times we look back with kind of this dissatisfied look like, oh, I wanted to do this and that and the other thing. We look at all the things that maybe we didn't get accomplished. But then when you really take time for that reflection, you realize that you accomplished a lot more than maybe you think you did. And when you give yourself time with gratitude to look back, you're like, well, we did do this and we did do that. And, I did
Absolutely.
accomplish this. And you're like, well, maybe I did do more than I thought I did, or maybe
Yes.
I was more successful than I'm allowing myself to see. So I think to look back first with, reflection on what you did do and to, maybe celebrate that a little bit. And then that can give you confidence to make other goals going into the next year, to say, okay, I actually did do pretty well in some of these areas. So I think that, I'm capable and able to meet the next goals. And maybe some of these things that I didn't get done, are they still even relevant anymore? Maybe they can just go away. Maybe they don't matter anymore, or maybe they do. And so they're going to be first in this coming year. So that's more of a tangible way to look at, goal setting and checking in and reflecting for the next year.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Kim. Yeah, I love that.
Yay!
It's really, yeah,
All
because
right.
you can always change, right? You can always say,
That's another thing. Every year
yeah.
you do change, right? And your goals might change. And the things, it can be funny when you look back and some of the things that maybe you thought were really important, they're just not that important to you anymore.
Right.
And they're not really relevant. Or
Yeah.
maybe, you've just realized that that's no longer a goal for you, or maybe it was something that you were comparing with someone else, or you were just trying to, you were being influenced by something that wasn't really truly in your heart. And when you address that, you realize, no, I don't need that anymore.
Right.
So,
and you can let it go, right? It's okay, right? And it's a good way. That's a good way of testing your desires, right? Is if they keep showing up year after year and it keep, and or you look back and you're like, wow, that's so funny that I really wanted to jump out of an airplane, back then, but I have zero desire to do that right now. I have kids and like, it's just not worth it to me. So it's okay that is a bucket list thing that I'm not going to do. And I'm okay with that. And I can let it go.
right, right. Okay, well, Erin, I want to thank you so much for setting the record straight for New Year's and for goal making and resolutions and everything. No resolutions, just goal setting, just realistic and dreams that can happen. So thank you so much for bringing all of your wisdom to the podcast today.
My pleasure. Grateful to be here. Thanks, Kim.
No power.